Welcome back to Fox and Friends. First, 4:16 in the morning here on the East Coast. A Fox News alert for you. At least 21 people are now dead and hundreds arrested amid the Iranian protests as the Trump administration calls on the UN to take action.
If the Iranian dictatorship's history is any guide, we can expect more outrageous abuses in the days to come. The UN must speak out. In the days ahead, we will be calling for an emergency session. We must not be silent. The people of Iran are crying out for freedom.
We're here now to weigh in is the managing director for the Israel Project, Omri. Ceren. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it this
Thanks
morning.
for having me.
Yeah, so lots going on in Iran with these protests. President Trump tweeting his opinion on it, but you say, and as we were just discussing that he also needs to act.
Yeah, you know, the president has been very clear that his support and his administration's support for the protesters isn't going to be rhetorical. It's not. They are going to do something. And there's this weird debate developing right now where everyone is approving of the president's statements but telling him to stay out, or his critics are telling him to stay out. And the president has been very clear that his actions, that his words are going to be backed by actions. And now the question is, what is he going to do? And that's really what
should he do? I mean, should he push for regime change? What should happen here?
So for the first time in a long time, people are talking about how the fundamental problem in Iran is the regime. How we get to solving that problem is an open debate. One of the things that's a no-brainer is the regime is using its resources to shoot people in the streets, and the United States has enormous leverage to cut off those resources. We know where the IRGC gets their money. They get it from the Central Bank of Iran. We know where the Supreme Leader gets his money. He gets it from his business empire. We should sanction those.
Well, and some of that money and some of those sanctions that were lifted came from us.
That's exactly right. So we used to have very, very harsh sanctions on the Central Bank of Iran. We used to go after the Supreme Leader's business dealings. But because of the nuclear deal, we lifted those sanctions. But those sanctions now need to be reimposed for human rights reasons. They're using their resources to mow down people in the streets.
Yeah, and is that possibly why we're hearing from former members of the Obama administration now saying, don't do anything, others saying, be quiet?
That's exactly right. You know, they've manufactured any number of reasons for inaction. They say the president shouldn't act because the protests are too small, or because they're hardline, or because it won't work, or because it'll alienate the Europeans. All of those are just excuses not to act because they know that the deal that they worked out has enabled a lot of these atrocities that we've been seeing.
And as we take a look at these protesters are different than back in 2009.
That's absolutely right. These protesters are being driven by economic concerns. In 2009, it was much more political concerns, middle class. These protesters say, listen, billions of dollars have been coming into Iran since the nuclear deal, and we haven't seen any of that. And the reason we haven't seen that, the protesters say, is because the regime has been taking the money that they got and spending it in places like Syria and Lebanon and funding Hamas and Gaza. And the protesters are chanting, enough is enough. The regime is committed to spending its windfall overseas. We have to get rid of the regime.
Yeah, and this is a younger generation. They know that they can have a different life.
Yeah, it's not just a younger generation. You're absolutely right. These people now know they can have a different life because cell phone penetration has increased by something like 40 times since 2009. So these people know they can have a different life. But really what is going on is you're seeing economically disadvantaged people saying, listen, billions have been flowing into this country since the nuclear deal, and we haven't seen any of it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have you back because it looks like that this is not going to end anytime soon.
Thank you.
All right.